Live with CDP Sports Talk, a weekly sports and entertainment podcast sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet. Live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and LinkedIn. And on audio via Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, Anchor FM, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Radio Public, and TuneIn. Now, here's your host, Chris Palme.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the 500th episode. That's right, 500th episode of Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show, brought to you by Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership at 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall. Check out barrycullen.com for the newest selection of new and pre-owned GM vehicles, along with their great selection of all-electric vehicles and Cadillac vehicles as well. You can call the dealership at 519-824 0210 and tell them Chris Palme sent you, or you can email the dealership at info@barrycullen.com. Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership has been family run and operated here in the city of Guelph since 1969. I've been a customer of Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership for the last 25 years, and they've been one of my major sponsors on this show the last 2.5 years as well. So please check out Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership here in Guelph. Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show is also brought to you by Wellington Brewery at 950 Woodlawn Road West here in Guelph, Ontario. Check out their website, wellingtonbrewery.ca. Try a Welly on, and please remember to drink responsibly. Wellington Brewery is proudly Canadian and has been Canadian operated and owned here in Guelph for 40 years now. They're one of Canada's oldest local craft breweries, so check out Wellington Brewery, celebrating their 40th year as one of Canada's oldest local craft breweries, and they have great beer there, and they do a lot of community. They have a lot of community involvement here in the city of Guelph with Wellington Brewery as well. I hope everyone is doing well on this Tuesday, February 25th, 2025, and it's hard to believe this is 5 years, 500 episodes for Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show. And I want to say thank you to all my wonderful guests and everyone for watching this live streamed and on my audio platforms as well. And I want to say special thank you to some of these guests that came on my show really early on. Pat Gregoire, who came on when I started this show as Chris's Sports Talk on Instagram 5 years ago. And I want to say thank you to Eric Smith, the voice of the Toronto Raptors, Chuck Swirsky, the voice of the Chicago Bulls, Jerry Howarth, Dan Truman from ESPN and Sportsnet, the Philly Fanatic I've had on this show, Jason Dunn, a former NFL tight end with the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles, Rod Smith, part of the 1988 Notre Dame national champion Fighting Irish football team, coming on my show. Tommy Edwards, the legendary PA announcer for the Chicago Bulls and created the intro for Michael Jordan, came on the show. Tom Cahoon, the longtime public address announcer for the St. Louis Blues since 1987, has been on here. John Gerkler, who is one of the key people, along with Pat Gregoire, who got me into the National Lacrosse League, has been on my show a number of times. Greg Eno, who's one of the most respected guests they've had from Detroit, has been on my show, and Christine Lacey. So I wish I could name all my guests, but I want to say thank you to all of them. And today's guest was one of my first he was one of the first guys to believe in my work when this was called Chris's Corner on Instagram Live way back 5 years ago, and I'm going to bring him on today. I'm proud to call him a friend, and he's also got me involved with the National Lacrosse League. We don't always agree on sports or the NFL, him being a Bills fan and me being an Eagles fan, but I'm going to bring him on today. He is a manager with Coolbet Canada, an analyst with the National Lacrosse League's Halifax Thunderbirds, and he's an analyst with the TSN National Lacrosse League Game of the Week, and I'm going to bring him on right now. His name is Pat Gregoire, who's on his 10th time on Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show. Good afternoon, Pat. How you doing?
Doing great, Chris. Congratulations on 500 episodes. I'm honored to be the guest of this special episode, and it's really hard to believe that 5 years ago you started this thing. It's awesome to see where it's come. I'm very proud to be a 10-time returning guest, and I'm excited to chat about a lot of things. Crazy day in the NLL. Couldn't have worked better for me coming on the program after the news we're hearing this morning.
Well, I want to say thank you because you were one of the first guys to watch me when this show was on Instagram, and you just kept telling me to keep at it. And it took a while. It was a lot of hard work. There's been a lot of setbacks, but once I started getting guests come on my show, I think I've made some progress in the 5 years.
You certainly have, Chris, and there has been a lot of hard work. There's been a lot of progress, but as you know, in this industry, a lot more hard work to come. And I know you've got that work ethic, and I've got that determination to take this to bigger and better places. So I'm really proud of you, buddy.
Well, thank you. And you're still wearing the old retro shirt. I am in the process of rebranding myself. So I'll have to get you a new shirt. And your hat, I have to get one of those hats, by the way, a Coolbat hat.
Yes, absolutely. It'll be like a jersey swap that we see in sports. I'll get you a hat, you get me a t-shirt, and I think that's a fair trade.
Speaking of Coolbat Canada, what's some of the latest things going on at Coolbat Canada?
Yeah, you know what? It's obviously the busy time of the year when it comes to football has passed us with the Super Bowl. That's always our biggest event, bar none. But, with the Four Nations face-off that just happened, that was a very big event for us. We actually had some of our brand ambassadors on the road doing some content from Boston. Some of our great loyal customers were there too, from Canada and also from Finland. So that was a really cool event. Unfortunately, I was not able to go on the trip, so I was super jealous that some of our guys were able to be there, boots on the ground. But no, it's always a busy time around this time of year. Of course, NHL is picking up. NBA is back in the full swing of things. We're going to have March Madness just down the road as well. And the cool thing about Coolbet is, we've got odds on all sorts of sports. So if you're a lacrosse fan, there's lacrosse there. You've got the Briars this weekend, the men's Canadian national championship for curling. So if it's a sport, there's a good chance that we've got it. And it's never a dull moment. I know sometimes in the summer with just a little baseball here and there, I find pretty much from January all the way pretty much until June, it's never a dull moment at Coolbet.
Thoughts on the Four Nation tournament, and also, are you guys partnering up with the CFL again this year?
Yeah, we will for sure have CFL odds. Again, very, as you know, CFL super popular in a lot of pockets areas of Canada, and we've got some brand ambassadors in Edmonton with Dusty Nielsen, who calls games on TSN. And so obviously, we see a lot of action from there, but also in Winnipeg with Andrew Patterson, who is the host of Winnipeg Sports Talk. So yes, of course, CFL very, very popular with Coolbet. We've got some cool things coming for that season as well. Brett Lawther as well, one of our brand ambassadors, kicker for the Rough Riders. So we got some cool things coming down the pipeline for some contest to win some tickets in some of those cities that we mentioned, maybe even a possible road trip as well. In regards to the Four Nations, the first part of your question, I thought it was phenomenal. I thought it was from pretty much from start to finish. I think it met and beat expectations for a lot of people. Me personally, I was excited for it. Anytime you get best on best hockey, or any sport for that matter, when you tied in with pride, I think it was perfect. I think it was great. That first initial game against the US with the fights, 3 fights in 9 seconds, that obviously kind of increased the temperature. But there was a lot of naysayers. A lot of people said, well, it's just an all-star event. I don't know how much these guys are really going to care. But, when you put the best players on the world on the same playing surface, you attach their nation to it. I think a lot of these guys are playing for pride. The fact that we hadn't seen Connor McDavid play for Canada in a best on best. We hadn't seen Austin Matthews play for Team US in a best on best tournament. You put all those things together. And then, of course, obviously a lot of things going on in the world of politics. I think that heightened some things up as well. And then it came to a fever pitch with one of the best, hockey games I think that I've ever seen with Canada, eventually winning in overtime against a very good U.S. team. I think it really propels especially in the US, Chris, I felt like it grabbed a lot of attention south of the border. We were seeing it on ESPN. We saw Pat McAfee talking about it on his show. Like a lot of big news outlets down in the States that don't really pay a lot of attention to hockey had that limelight on hockey. And now the question is, can the NHL keep that momentum and continue to build up leading up to the Olympics? That's the big thing. We've got the Olympics next year, so it's not like this best on best isn't going to happen for another 2 years. We're going to get the Olympics, and then the World Cup of Hockey is coming back. So how does the NHL capitalize on this tournament that we had is the big question that I have, because hockey right now is so popular in the States. How do we allow it to stay popular, stay relevant, rolling into the playoffs?
I wanted to ask you this too, Pat. I know they only had 4 teams, but in the future, I think ideally 6 teams would be better if they could get a couple more countries in there, and to see if they could do this on a semi-regular basis. The All-Star game, the NHL All-Star game, I'm not a fan of anymore, and I'd rather see something like this every couple years than to have that meaningless All-Star game. In my opinion.
I totally agree, Chris. I think 6 teams is perfect. I know, again, with some political things with Russia, I don't know if they're able to come back in, but obviously they're a phenomenal country when it comes to hockey. I think Czech Republic, or Czechia as they're now known as, they're the defending world champions. I know it's not a best on best tournament, but they won the world championship last year. How do we not have them in this tournament? So I think with the World Cup, bringing in a couple of other teams would be, huge for this. Again, I mean, if Russia isn't in there, maybe it's Germany, and you can, they're an up and coming Canadian program. They're obviously not on the same level as the Big Four or the Big Five, but you have them in, and a guy like Leon Draisaitl can be on that team. He's one of the best players in the world. So having him on that level would be super important. But I agree. All-Star game for me, I get it. I understand. I don't mind the All-Star game, the home run derby in baseball. I think that's probably the best game, the best sport to have an All-Star game, because you can have a baseball game and still, go 100% and not have that risk of injury. We've seen what the NBA has come to with the All-Star game and the skills competition. It's, in my personal opinion, it is borderline unwatchable. And I think what we've seen here with the Four Nations face-off, I think the NBA is going to take a similar approach. I don't know if it's every year or if it's every couple of years, but I could 100% see a world where the All-Star game is Team USA versus the world. And you have, the best players from the US on one team, and then you have the likes of, because I don't know if we've ever seen this much world talent, in the NBA. You've got former MVPs, Luka Doncic, Jokic, Canadian SGA. He has been phenomenal. He's probably potentially going to win the MVP. So I think this year you could actually argue that you would be able to have a very competitive game between the US and the world, and it would add a more incentive for these guys to play hard, because as you see in these All-Star games, the effort level is minimal. And when you look at it like a sport like football, they don't even do the Pro Bowl anymore. It's a flag football game. And I understand, I get it. These guys don't want to get hurt. The stakes aren't high enough for them to elevate those stakes. I think when you put national pride in front of it, that's where it's going to elevate. And hockey, I get it. They did the 3-on-3, which was kind of cool, but guys are going through the motions. So if we have to have an All-Star game every other year, and then have this World Cup of hockey or the Olympics every, other year, some sort of best on best to supplement in between those years, those All-Star games will be a little more palpable. And we got to remember, those All-Star games, a lot of it is for corporate sponsors, for them, for the league to invite important people. It's an event that has to happen. But just hockey, the game itself, similar to lacrosse. Like, I don't think the NLL used to do an All-Star game. They got away from it because, to be quite frank, what's one of the best things about the game of lacrosse? It's the physicality, it's the intensity. Can't really have that in an All-Star game. Guys aren't really cross-checking each other. Guys aren't really going hard. So that's one thing we brought up on our halftime show this past week was, should the NLL adapt the All-Star game. Ashley said yes. I said absolutely no. But what I'd like to see is maybe a 3 nations tournament. You have Team USA, Team Canada, and the Hautenisaunis, the First Nations team, playing in some sort of tournament. Again, this is a bit of a pipe dream for the NL, but I think what the NHL has done something so progressive here, and has been such a positive news story that all these other leagues are going to look at this model here and say, well, we gotta somehow get involved in this.
Pat, I totally agree with you. If they can make it into like what the Four Nations Cup was, I'm all in favor of it. But if it's just going to be team this, team that, you're right. And lacrosse is like football. By the way, back in the 80s, the CFL had an all-star game too. And they got rid of it because guys were getting hurt, seriously hurt in a meaningless game. And football is a sport where you cannot have a proper all-star game as far as I'm concerned. And you're right. I agree with you, Pat. The only all-star game I really like right now is the Major League Baseball all-star game. The rest of them I don't like. And as for the NBA, I am following it again because the Detroit Pistons, for the first time in 15 years, have become relevant again. And I'm just so excited for the job. Tom Gore's finally hired the right GM, the right head coach, and Cade Cunningham is becoming one of the best players in the NBA's in front of everybody. And you'll see how great Detroit is supporting the Pistons. And the NBA to me is a better league when the Detroit Pistons are back in the playoff hunt. And I'm just so excited right now for what's going on with the Pistons.
Yeah, and good on you. I mean, I know there have been some lean years when it comes to the Pistons, but it's such an iconic franchise with so many great teams throughout the year, so many great players. And you think of, well, it doesn't really matter where they have played. When the teams have been good, they have come out and support. And I don't blame franchises for losing support, or fan bases for losing support when teams don't invest and put the proper product on the floor. I get it. I understand it. I that's their hard-earned money. They're able to do whatever they want. But the Pistons, they've proven that they are a basketball town. They are a sports town. They will support their teams as long as the investment is being made on the field, on the court, on the ice, whatever it may be. They're going to come out in droves and they're going to support it. And it's great to see Detroit getting at least in the right direction, getting back to where they be. Me personally, again, maybe this is just an NBA problem. I love, don't get me wrong, love basketball. March Madness is one of my favorite events to watch. The NBA playoffs is so much fun to watch. There is something wrong with the NBA game right now, whether it's the load management, the importance of the 3-point shot and more small ball, whatever it may be. I don't know what's going, but sure, it also doesn't help that the Toronto Raptors have been a mess. So the team I historically cheer for haven't been great. I just feel like there is not a strong enough emphasis in the play-in game. More teams get in. There just really isn't a strong emphasis of the regular season mattering. So I think the NBA's, and you can see it in the ratings. I mean, the ratings are down. The ratings are no doubt down. People are still big basketball fans because once playoffs start, ratings go through the roof. You watch ratings on ESPN talk shows when big news happens, and just even thinking of the Doncic trade that broke the internet. Like the interest is still there. It just feels like the regular season is just not as important in the NBA as it once was. So if they can and I don't have the right answers. I don't know what it is. If it's condensing the schedule, if it's even watching this year, like the most basketball I watched this year was during that play-in tournament. I didn't really before. I thought it was kind of a weird concept, but it felt like because stakes were higher, players had an incentive to a cash prize and all that. The intensity was there. So for me, I think there is some issues when it comes to the regular season, the product that we're seeing on the court for the NBA, but I'm not going to knock you for being back in on the Pistons because, man, they are a fun team to watch.
As for the NBA, Pat, you made some good points. And right now, my suggestions for them is they've ruined the game by taking out the physical play, the defense aspect of it. Even going back to work Pistons 20 years ago, I know they weren't the most talented team, but they worked hard and they played great defense. They've taken that out of it. And also load management too. Guys just checking out, or I know guys get hurt and stuff like that, but I just compare to the other sports, I just don't like this load management thing. And
Agreed.
there's a couple of things I want changed. And also too, and I would be all in favor of the NHL doing this, go from 82 games down to 70. I know they won't do it because, Pat, it's a business and 12 games is a lot. But to me, quality over quantity. And I think there's just too many games, in my
I
opinion.
agree.
Even Major League Baseball, 162 games, that's like a marathon. I really think Major League Baseball should go down to 150 games, ideally.
I agree in droves with that, Chris. I think these seasons are far too long, especially with the NBA and the MLB. We're seeing it with load management. We're starting to see load management come out in baseball as well too. So for me, no doubt, I 100% agree. I think it puts more emphasis on the regular season, and I think we'll see ultimately, if you do make those changes, I think we'll see a better product when it comes to the regular season.
And that's why we love the CFL, the NFL, and the National Lacrosse League. There's only 17, 18 games, and every game is important in terms of playoff positioning as well. So,
yeah, no, that's a great point, Chris.
hey, Pat, let's get to the National Lacrosse League. And do you have some breaking news to share with our audience this morning?
Yes, there was a big trade in the National Lacrosse League, and it's an interesting one because it's one of Toronto's longest tenured players in Nick Rose, their goaltender. As everyone, if you do follow the NLL, you are well aware that this Toronto team is having one of their worst seasons in many years, and it looks like Jamie Dawick is ready to blow things up and start to get rid of some of his veteran pieces, and whether they're rentals or not. I know a lot of these players that are in talks to be traded are on expiring contracts. So there is a possibility Nick Rose does return in the offseason, but what we do know is he's headed back to Calgary, one of the teams he actually started his career with. So he's headed to the Roughnecks alongside defender and Ottawa, Ontario native Tyler Hendricks, and a 4th round pick in 2025 to Calgary. And Toronto are receiving a 1st round pick in the 2026 draft, which is going to be probably one of the best drafts I think we've ever seen. So that is a huge get for Jamie Dawick, the owner and GM of the Rock. They'll also pick up Goa Abrams, another goalie, obviously to whether it's going to be he's going to be the starter or what they decide to do in between the pipes there. But they also pick up defender Robert Hudson, who at one point was a 1st round draft pick. He's an Oakville guy, so a lot of familiarity with this organization. Just unfortunate for him, he hasn't been able to really catch on. He's drafted by Georgia, and then Calgary. He's kind of been in and out of the lineup, dealing with some injuries and some consistencies. So a great opportunity for Hudson to come home to Ontario, get an opportunity there. But Calgary, obviously a huge move, a buy high, go all in. We know that the saga with their starting goaltender, Christian Dalbianco, was put on the holdout list. He's currently in a contract dispute with Calgary. He was given the franchise tag, but has not signed a contract. So they went into this year with Cam McLeod, and obviously things, even though they're in a playoff spot right now, goaltending and defense has been an issue. So they feel like if they're able to get a veteran goaltender in Nick Rose, the defending goalie of the year, it feels like it's going to increase their chances, not just to make the playoffs, but potentially get a playoff push and be a contender. And I think this is a big move for them to go out and shed some assets and prove to this fan base and the guys in the locker room that they're all in.
Do you see any more moves by the Toronto Rock before the March 10th trade deadline? And how much of an impact is Nick Rose going to make on Calgary? Because right now, Pat, you've got Buffalo and Saskatchewan, the 2 most dominant teams. And then you've got a whole bunch of teams, both 6-5, 6-4 right now, going into the second half of the NLL season.
Well, I think that's a 2-part question. I think one, it's going to make a big impact. Cam McLeod, no knock on him. He is a young and up and coming goalie. Kind of got, like I said, having to fill the shoes of a Christian Dalbianco has been difficult. I don't think the defense has played all that well in front of him. We know they've got one of the highest scoring offenses. So All they needed to do was keep the score low. And there have been some games where things have gotten away from them. They now get a guy like Nick Rose, who is obviously not a proven champion in the NLL, but a proven elite goalie. We've seen the numbers that he's put up over the past few years. Is this his best year? No, probably not. But at the start of the year, they were also did not have Brad Cree in the lineup, didn't have Latrell Harris in the lineup. Challen Rogers was out. So a lot of really strong defenders not in that lineup in front of them. So I think that also kind of goes to show you where his game was at. But as the team got more healthy, his numbers improved. I really feel like he's going to be able to make an impact. That second part of the question, though, is that enough to get over the hump? Because you nailed it. There are right now two teams, head and shoulders better than the rest. You look at Buffalo, they lost their first regular season game in about 20 or something games against a very good San Diego team. They are right now, bar none, the favorites to go back to back to back. Be the first time a team has gone back to back to back since Rochester did it back in the mid 2010s. Or I believe it was, somewhere in that era then. And the goalie who did that for Rochester, Matt Vince. He has an opportunity to be the first goalie to go back to back to back twice with two different franchises, kind of cementing himself as the greatest goalie of all time, maybe the greatest lacrosse player of all time. You look at Saskatchewan, very young, very athletic, but they've got some good veterans as well. Probably one of the most well-rounded team. You look at the defense, like as mentioned, they're young, they're athletic, they're aggressive. You look at the offense, sure, you've got some superstars like a Robert Church, but when you look at that lineup, everyone on the floor can contribute. You can't really just key in on one or two players because they have so many different dynamic pieces that can do so much for them. And then Frank Chiliano has been playing phenomenal this year. And even when he was out with him and his wife expecting the birth of their child, Thomas Kaiser comes into the fold and he wins 2 games. So this is a very, very, very well-rounded team. Do I feel like Calgary has enough to get over that hump to beat one of those two teams? It's tough to say. It's tough to say to see what we'll have to see because Nick Rose, as great as a goaltender he is, he wasn't able to get over the hump when it comes to a team like Buffalo. So I think we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see if Calgary does more. And you asked me, is Toronto going to do anything else? I absolutely think that Jamie Dawick is not done. There have been rumors that Mitch Desnew and Chris Corbeil could be on their way to Philadelphia. There are some rumblings that Philadelphia is looking to improve their back end. There's rumors that Brad Cree could be on the way out as well. A couple of teams looking at improving their back end with a cornerstone defender. So you look at what Toronto's done over the past few years, it's remarkable. Unfortunately for them, they haven't been able to get over the Bandits. The caveat here, though, is if you're a Toronto Rock fan and you think the sky is falling, this is a blow up, this is a team hitting the reset button, it might not be, because a lot of those players that I mentioned, they are all on expiring contracts. Jamie Dawick still has the opportunity to re-sign some of these players in the offseason. So doesn't mean it's going to happen. Also doesn't mean that they're gone for good. So there still is a lot of uncertainty when it comes to next year. So I just pump the tires. You could probably kiss your playoff hopes goodbye, though, as even if they were to keep all their assets, with 8 losses already, a lot of people have been saying that with the new unified standings, 8-10, 9-9 is like the minimum that you probably can get into the playoffs. They'd pretty much have one more game on the schedule that they could lose and have to basically be perfect the rest of the way. It's unfortunate, but I think this is the right move by Jamie Dawick to start thinking about the future, shed off some of these assets, and who knows, maybe you get a couple of these guys back in the offseason.
Thoughts on head coach Matt Sawyer? Do you see him being there long-term to get this team back up, or do you feel they might need a change behind the bench at some point?
It's difficult because I think when you do look at a head coach job, you should be tested or marked on what you've been able to do full body of work. And the regular season success was there. There's no doubt about it. First seed last year, near the top the year before that. They're a team that, in the regular season had one of the best defenses, had Nick Rose, an elite goalie, and then an offense that is super dynamic. But they hadn't been able to get over the hump with Buffalo. A lot of people thought that, last year could possibly be his last chance. I think with all the injuries to start this year and the fact that now they are selling off their assets, Jamie Dawick is a very, very loyal person. He has a great relationship with Matt Sawyer. It's so difficult. It's you run into a historic, like a potential, world beater, a potential dynasty in Buffalo. Like sometimes you got to think like, is there someone better out there than Matt Sawyer that you can bring in? I don't know. I don't know if I have that answer. But at the same time, it's like, okay, you go out and get someone. Are you going to get better results? Are you going to be able to get over that hump? Or is it better to get with, keep the guy that has almost been able to get over the hump, and eventually you're going to get there. It's difficult. It really is. I mean, you look at what the Toronto Maple Leafs have done. They kept the same core and elected to fire the coach in Sheldon Keefe and bring in a different coach. There's pretty much two different ways. And I know we're seeing some of these assets shed. I think we'll find out a lot if this is a true blow up or not. And if it is a true blow up, if you're going to blow up the roster, you might as well start with a fresh new head coach. Me personally, though, not saying what I would do, but what I feel like Toronto's going to do, what I feel Jamie Dawick is going to do is going to give this group one more chance, try to re-sign all these guys that potentially he could be trading off, give Matt Sawyer another chance with this group, because who could have envisioned that Challen Rogers, Brad Cree, Latrell Harris, Tom Schreiber, 4 of your best 5 players, all not starting the year off, missing significant time. Because as you mentioned, the unified standings, it is so jam-logged. If they instead of going 0 for 5, they go 2 for 3 even, this could be a different conversation. We could not be talking about Nick Rose getting traded. We could be talking about Jamie Dawick being a buyer at the deadline. So I think it's going to be one more opportunity for Sawyer and this regime. Give them another chance. But if they do fall short next year, Matt Sawyer is a phenomenal coach. I just don't see how they're able to bring him back after falling short for another year with the same group and the same coaching staff.
Sort of reminds me of the Buffalo Bills and not getting over the hump with the Kansas City Chiefs. That's how I look at the Toronto Rock right now. A little bit about like the Buffalo Bills. Very competitive regular seasons, very talented, but when it comes to a certain team, they just can't get over the hump.
Yeah, the parallels are certainly there. I use the Leaf parallel, but it probably would make more sense to use the Buffalo parallel, as it's usually the conference final or the second round. That's what we've seen with Toronto. So I think that's the case. And that's what, as a Bills fan, it changes every time. It's like, okay, Sean McDermott has done such a great job with this core and the regular season success and dominating the division and making deep playoff runs. But falling short in the same fashion time and time again. But you have to ask yourself and have an honest question: who is better out there? Are you going to regret it? And sometimes it's easier to be like, okay, let's run it back. But if you continue to do the same thing over and over and over and over again and expect the same results, that's literally the definition of insanity. So much like what I said with Toronto and what I'll say with the Bills is it wouldn't be what I would do, but what I think and I envision, it's going to be one more opportunity for McDermott. It's going to be one more opportunity for Sawyer. And if they can't get over the hump, then you have no choice but to make the change. Should the change probably have already happened? Probably. But from all the other great things that have happened before the process to get to that point, I think that's what both ownerships are kind of dealing with and saying, well, we know how close we are. Maybe we just run it back. So it'll be interesting to see what both those franchises do in the offseason.
I have a viewer watching, Ryan O'Neill. I want to say thank you to Ryan. Ryan was the station manager with WQEE 99.1 FM in Georgia, and he had faith in my show and had my show on his station for 2 years. And Ryan is a huge sports fan in Georgia, and I think he's getting into lacrosse as well. So I want to say thank you to Ryan for being one of my supporters of my show and for keeping in touch with me as well. And I wanted to ask you this too, Pat, since we're still talking about lacrosse. The trade deadline is March 10th. Do you see it being a very active trade deadline, or you see maybe one or two more moves and that's about it?
Well, for whatever reason, it looks like Jamie Dowick's trying to get a lot of his work done before that deadline. So maybe the actual date itself might not be as active. But if you think of, we already seen what Toronto has done with Rose. Like I mentioned, Mitch Desnew and Chris Corbeil have been rumored on their way out. Brad Curry has been rumored. I don't know about Tom Schreiber. I haven't heard anything yet, but he's on an expiring deal. If you look at a team like Colorado, they could be out without Zed Williams. They need to fill a stopgap there. You look at with Philadelphia getting better, with Calgary getting better. Do teams like Rochester, do teams like Vancouver, Halifax, although Halifax is a lot higher in the standings after a little bit of a winning streak here, but those other teams that are going to be fighting for playoff spots, how do you just sit on your hands and not make moves? The unified standings, though, Chris, as you've mentioned a couple of times now, and I've mentioned it, there's just so much parity, and so many teams still think they are in the playoffs. I think you could definitely say that Albany, Toronto now especially, and maybe even Las Vegas, those three teams, it would, barring a miracle, it's going to be really difficult for those teams to make it. Every other team, Rochester, Philadelphia, Halifax, Calgary, as I mentioned, like all these other teams, Vancouver, they still believe they're in it and they still have a legitimate chance, not just to make the playoffs, but maybe even get a home playoff date. So that kind of really muddies the waters. There's not a lot of teams that are going to be sellers. So I think it will be a little bit quieter on that front. Vancouver has made it abundantly clear that that during their losing streak right now, they have to be better, especially offensively. I would be shocked if we don't see Philadelphia go out and get another piece for that offense. Kurt Malosky said it in his post-game press conference. The GM and the head coach for Vancouver said, we have to be better. As my job as GM, I have to, there's not going to be one stone unturned. I need to find a way to make my team better. And I believe him. I think he is going to be looking into it. So when you look at Albany, though, very young team, super, super young team. They don't have a lot of expiring contracts. They don't have a lot of veterans to deal. They're not going to really want to part ways with a lot of their key pieces because, they're under contract for a while. They're young guys. They're restricted free agents. So there's a lot of moving parts when it comes to Albany. So I want to say I think it's going to be a little bit quiet, with the exception of these Toronto deals and maybe a couple here and there from Vegas, or maybe Albany finds a veteran that they can move from. But then again, I didn't have Nick Rose getting traded to Calgary 2 weeks before the deadline on my bingo card either.
Besides the Toronto Rock, what other team would you consider a disappointment this year? And maybe a team that's kind of surprised you in this 24-25 National Cross League season?
Well, I think that the other disappointing team has to be Albany, sitting at 3-8 as well. They're a team that was in the finals, a team that showed a lot of promise with a very, very young team. Alex Simmons, rookie of the year, alongside his running mate in Ty Kurtz. And they're still putting up great numbers. I think the issue with them is it's twofold. It's one, a lot of injuries to key veteran players on defense. It's Doug Jamieson not playing at the elite level as he can. He started out strong, but things have certainly fallen off. Again, not a lot of veteran pieces in front of him. He's facing a lot more shots. He's facing a lot more high quality shots. So I'm not putting it all on Jamieson. Sure, he hasn't been at his best. But when you look at what was going on in front of him, it kind of makes more sense. Look, he had an unbelievable game last week, and the team won. They held Philly to just 6 goals. That goes to show you how important goaltending is in the National Lacrosse League. He was on another level. It just seemed like last year, everything that could go right for Albany went right. The young kids contributed. The defense was great. The veterans, which not many on their teams stepped up, and Doug Jamieson was awesome. And Glenn Clark and that entire coaching staff got the most they could get out of that roster. A little bit of adversity to start, teams kind of figure out, and I don't want to say figure out because Simmons and Kurtz are still putting up pretty solid numbers. Teams kind of get some film out there and at least can contain you, and they're finding ways to get stops. And then when you couple that with some of the other issues, like I mentioned, with Jamieson not being at his best and the defense being banged up, things have gone completely sideways for Albany. But with that being said, they don't lose much in the offseason. I could see them being back to where they were last year. It's just, with this unified standings, you go on a big losing streak to start the year. It's really difficult to get back in the mix. I think from a surprise, I'm reluctant to say Saskatchewan because I think the last time we had a conversation, maybe before the season, or maybe it was even in the off season, I said Saskatchewan was going to be my bounce back team and they were going to make the playoffs. But the surprise is the fact that they're 9-2 and just a game behind Buffalo. I think that's where the big surprise is. And they're a team that's been on the cusp. And the big difference from this year to last year, it's been 2. I mean, a full season of Derek Keenan on the bench has been huge. Getting him back on that coaching staff, no doubt has been massive. But they're winning close games. In years past, they were dropping a lot of those 1-goal games. That is such a big difference with the unified standings. Picking up those 1-goal games, finding ways to win. They go out and get an Austin Shanks to kind of add to more of their depth scoring. The defense gets a little bit older, a little bit wiser, and you kind of couple all those things together. And now all of a sudden they're 9-2 and one of the top teams in the game. So I would say that's probably my biggest surprise team. Calgary at 6-5. I did not anticipate them being in a playoff spot this late into the season, just because of the uncertainty in goaltending. And I think just their offense has been so good. It's kept them alive. That's been a bit of surprise. San Diego below 500 is technically a surprise. But I don't want to toot my own horn. I said at the start of the year, and they still might make the playoffs and prove me wrong, but they were my surprise team to miss the playoffs. I felt like there was too much turnover offensively with that group, a lot of pressure on a young goalie and Chris O'Riglieri. But as you saw against Buffalo, when they are on and when they are clicking,
they're tough.
They're a very, very good team. I think their defense is supremely underrated. They're a tough team, and they're a tough team to beat. It's just, I thought to start the year, way too much turnover in the offense. Basically bringing a complete left side of their O just makes things far too challenging to become a champion right away and be a contender right away. With that being said, San Diego could be a sleeper where if they do get into the playoffs at an 8 or a 7 seed, that's a team you do not want to play in a one and done. You might feel better about that beating them 2 of 3, but I can tell you, if Buffalo's sitting at first place and San Diego's in 8th, of course, the Bandits are confident. They believe they can beat anyone on any night. I'm sure there's a lot of other teams they would much rather play than a San Diego team that they beat just by 1 goal on the road. And then they were handed their first loss in almost a full calendar year just a week ago. So San Diego would be a surprise, I guess, technically, even though I saw the downfall coming. But at the same time, they are a team that, if I'm a top seed, I do not want to see them in that one and done first round.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about the Philadelphia Wings. They got off to a good start, 4-1, and now they're 5-6. Do you feel they can add something at the trade deadline to get this team into one of the top 4 spots?
Well, like I mentioned with these rumors and things are moving quickly, but it sounds like Mitch Desnew and Chris Corbeil, 2 veteran defenders, could be on the move to Philadelphia. And it sounds like now Shane Simpson, a transition star, used to play for Calgary. He's now on Vegas, could possibly be in the mix as well for that. So now all of a sudden you have 3 veteran defenders, 2 defenders in Desnew and Simpson who are transition studs. I think adding those 3, hats off to general manager Paul Day, because when I look at that offense, they are, and the numbers speak for it, they are one of the most dynamic offenses in the league. Number 1 and 2 point scorers in the league right now, Mitch Jones and Joe Retziteritz, 82 and 81 points. Mind you, they played 11 games. Dane Smith and Josh Byrne have only played 9. So when you look at points per game, Smith and Josh Byrne are higher. But there are 4 players right now in the NL on pace to beat Dane Smith's all-time regular season, single season, I should say, scoring record. That's Dane Smith himself, Josh Byrne, and then the 2 players from Philadelphia, as mentioned, Joe Resetarits and Mitch Jones. You also factor in that Philadelphia gets 2 great young American players, Brendan O'Neill, who I think right now you could probably argue him or Dyson Williams are the rookies of the year. Holden Cattoni, although maybe he might be a guy that could be on the way out. They have to get, if they're going to improve their defense, there's going to be someone on offense that has to go. And Jones isn't going anywhere. Resetarits isn't going anywhere. The captain, Blaze Reardon, who's, also his production's dropped off, but he does so many great things on and off the floor for that team. He's not going anywhere. I don't see them chipping out Cattoni. And then, like I said, Michael Sowers, the other American, and Brendan O'Neill, they're not going anywhere. Holden Cattoni might be that odd man out, a 60-point scorer so far. Just a deadly outside shot. I know there would be teams, most notably Vegas, like that sounds like a really good landing spot for him. Vegas needs to get better offensively on the left-hand side. Well, you add a Cattoni and you lose a Shane Simpson. That might be the trade right there. Again, that's just complete speculation on my part. Haven't seen anything come through the wire or any of my sources letting me know that. I just have heard that Simpson could be on the move, and hearing that Philadelphia, outside of the trade they're already looking at, is looking to make that move. So that would be a trade that I'd be looking for. And Chris, if come Monday or in 2 weeks, Monday's time, and Philadelphia is able to add 3 veteran defenders that have the ability to score in transition, they certainly are a team that can say, hey, we went out there, we made some splashes. Our offense is ready to go. Defense, Nick Damu, the goalie. Now this is on you to prove it, because they've been on the cusp of being a playoff team. Get knocked out of the first round, as in Philadelphia. If you want to build up that fan base, winning is going to. And Philly, they're so passionate. They love to win. They're also vocal when things aren't going right. So if they're able to turn this around, Philly's been getting okay crowds, to say the least. But if they can turn into a championship contender, with the Wings being done, and with the 76ers and the Flyers not being great teams this year,
no,
I could see an uptick when it comes to the attendance of these Philadelphia Wings games down the stretch. Of course, if they make those changes and we start seeing wins come backing onto the other side of the docket here.
Hey, Pat, if you've got time for a little more time, I wanted to talk to you about the Ottawa Black Bears, formerly the New York Riptide. They're 5-6. Thoughts on Ottawa, and do you feel from your observations that this team can be successful long-term in Ottawa?
Well, first and foremost, let's talk about the team on the floor to start. I'm going to be seeing them again this week for the NLL Game of the Week on Friday against Georgia. Such a confusing team. In years past, they've been one of the most dynamic offenses, led by Jeff Teat, who just on the defensive side and with goaltending, just couldn't find ways to win close games because they couldn't get those stops. Now they go out, they get Zach Higgins, who in my opinion could be a potential MVP candidate for how well he's been playing. The defense is vastly improved. Brian Beazle, their new defensive coordinator, has injected new life into that defense. But then on the flip side, for how good defensively are, 100 goals against. I think that's good enough for second best in the NL. The Buffalo Bandits, the only other team that allows less goals. So there you go. Defense wins championships. But with that being said, the offense has just been so underwhelming. The lowest scoring team in the league, and you have so many great offensive weapons in a Jeff Teat, Larson Sundown, Riley O'Connor, Connor Kiernan. It's been very underwhelming from an offensive standpoint. This is a team you asked about, Philly making some changes. Who else? if I am GM Rich Lisk, I'm looking to go out and get a righty. I would be trying to get Chris Boucher from Toronto, even if it's a rental for a year. You can't keep wasting the prime years of Jeff Teat, and now his production has even dropped off. It's not like he's carrying this team either. He's on pace to have his lowest point scoring. So it's affecting everyone. In terms of the long-term success, it's been steady. They haven't been able to replicate what they had attendance-wise. I think it was just under 7,000 in that first game. They've been around, 5,000, just under 6,000, which is not bad. But the difficult thing is it's tough to get out to Canada. It's a really difficult rink to play in. They're partnered with the Senators. They're not owned by the Senators. They are still owned by GF Sports, the same conglomerate that owned them when they were in Long Island. But because they're partnered, they want them to play at Canadian Tire. They want to fill out those dates. So I think, me personally, someone away from the franchise, I think they would get much more support if they were to play at Lansdowne, the downtown arena where the 67s play, attached to where the Red Blacks, the field, the stadium that they play. I think that would just be a way easier place to get to. It's a smaller venue. You can build a much better atmosphere in there. But with that being said, Ottawa is a up and coming, and I don't even want to say up and coming. It is a lacrosse hotbed. If they can figure out a way, and I don't know if it's collecting more wins, whatever it may be, like, I think that's when you'll see a higher tick in what they're getting. But to be quite frank, the 5,000, 6,000 that they're getting in Ottawa, it's already better than what they were getting in Long Island. So that's a win for the group there. But of course, I think the potential for this would be if they can start getting wins, if they could be a contender, they could be getting numbers like we see in Halifax. They could be, around that 10,000, 9,000, 8,000. I think if you get that, sell out the lower bowl at the Canadian Tire Center, I think that would be a success for this group. But it's going to take time. Unless they're, a championship contender, it's going to take time for them to grow this thing and get to where they want to be.
Do you see expansion happening anytime soon with the National Lacrosse League?
I think within the next couple of years, we could see, one or two teams added. I think ideally they'd like to get to that 16. But one thing that Brett Frood, the new commissioner of the NLL, his big, hammering point here is not growing too quickly. He wants to make sure that the teams in the NLL are thriving before they add two more. Let's be realistic here. We lost a team in Panther City, probably a franchise that, to be quite honest, was not set up for success. Maybe shouldn't even have had a team. But I know for a fact, having conversations with Brett Frood and different people at the NLL, there are franchises calling, or potential franchises calling. NHL, NBA ownerships, different ownership groups saying, we want a franchise. And so the want is there. They're just making sure that they don't rush into things, making sure that the ownership is stable, making sure that a successful building is there, that there is a path to success, not like a Panther City where you go there, or where the New York Riptide were playing in Long Island. Like, they don't want to have to relocate a team again. Like, if they want to make sure that is sustainable. And when you look at a lot of the teams, when you look at the teams that are near the top in attendance, they're so healthy and couldn't be healthier. Buffalo's close to a sellout every game. Calgary is back to having, 12,000 fans in the stands. Colorado, not as good as it once was, but still getting 10,000 a game. Halifax, smaller venue, but, they're close to selling out that building every single night. Las Vegas, they just had to relocate. They're still in Vegas, Henderson down the road, but that building only holds about, 5,500, getting sold out or getting close to selling out. But then you look at near the bottom, Albany, struggling to fill that building. And that's a team last year that was on a championship run and they were struggling to get fans. Rochester, things are still looking gloomy there. Sorry, I didn't even mention Vancouver. Vancouver is doing phenomenal as well. They are really getting those crowds. San Diego's starting to grow a little bit. So there's a big difference between the top fan bases in the league and the bottom. And I think what they want to do is make sure those ones at the bottom are in a healthy spot before we expand. And if they're not, then rather than expanding, Well, maybe we think about moving in Albany. Maybe we think about moving in Georgia. Maybe we think about relocating some of those teams rather than bringing in a team, putting all your focus and emphasis there and forgetting about the franchises and the membership that is already there. And then having yourself to either lose a team like we saw in Panther City or relocate a team like we saw in New York.
Absolutely. And finally, Pat, we're going to wrap this up shortly. I don't want to keep you too much longer.
Of course.
But can you just tell us about your upcoming TSN game of the week, your thoughts on Georgia and Ottawa, and just tell my audience a little bit of what a game day broadcast is like for TSN crew?
Sure. I'll answer the game question first, Chris, because I do think this is a really interesting one. When you look at Ottawa, they are in that must-win category. They don't want to fall too behind some of these other teams that are starting to collect wins. We talk about how important the unified standing is. Already talked about the offense struggling, won't go into too much more, but you look at what they're able to do offense or defensively, and with Zach Higgins, as long as Zach Higgins is in between the pipes, they have a chance to win. When you look at a team like Georgia sitting at 6-4, looks like a solid team, but they've got a -4 goal differential. They're a team that is very Jekyll and Hyde, but they're also a team that I believe they're 2-1 right now in overtime games. They have been in 6 1-goal games this year and have won 4 of them. They are finding ways to win, and you can't knock that. You cannot knock that. I think, yes, you can question whether they're as good as the record shows, but one thing you can't question is the ability to win those close games. I think this comes down to, in this game, goaltending. Brett Dobson coming off one of his best games of the season. He was phenomenal against Toronto, especially in overtime and in that fourth quarter. I think it really comes down to, if Brett Dobson can go save for save with Zach Higgins, Georgia no doubt has a chance to win this game. But as we know, Ottawa, they have the capabilities to go off. They scored 18 goals 2 games ago. Which Ottawa offense shows up? Is going to be the stagnant, the disjointed team that we saw last week on the TSM game of the week, or is going to be one of those high-powered teams led by Jeff Teat? I'm really looking forward to it. Should be a good game. Now, what goes into a game day broadcast? So let's say for instance, this Friday, my broadcast partners and I and our producer will hop in our rental car. We usually stay downtown Ottawa. But this time we're staying in Canada, which actually is much better for a commute. Not as much to do, before or after games, but apparently the hotel we're staying at near the arena is quite nice. That's where all the NLL teams and the NHL teams stay. So we wake up, drive over to the arena, and each team has a morning shoot around, like a morning practice, a little more intense than what you would see with like a morning skate with an NHL team, because there is limited practice time for these teams in the NLL. A lot of them use this morning shoot around as a practice. Of course, there's no physical contact. Most of them are wearing helmets and gloves, but they use it a lot of this to go over plays, do their walkthroughs, get a great stretch in. So we watch those, see what the teams are doing, have an additional conversation with coaches to find out any last minute scratches. If there's any players that we weren't able to catch up with during the week, we'll talk to them as well, because during the week, we'll usually set up calls with both teams throughout the week, usually a defensive player and an offensive player from each team, and then a coach. So catch up with them, have their conversation. While that's going on, talk with our producer and our director, kind of what the show could look like, talk about our open, maybe our halftime segments, talk to Ashley or Mackie or whoever may be our sideline reporter for that game, go over what storylines they're looking to talk to as well. So you do that, head back to the hotel. Some people like to nap. Some people like to go over their notes, maybe go for a workout. I'm usually, try to get a workout in and go over my notes. And then if there's time for a quick nap before you can get ready, I usually will try to do that as well. And then, you get up, put your suit on, try to make yourself look presentable for the game, and hop back in the car and head over to the arena. Usually we like to get there about 2 hours before. Drop your stuff off, get settled inside the booth, go down, talk to players, coaches again, maybe the refs, talk to them as well. And then usually about 45 to 30 minutes before, head back up. And we'll do our pregame records. Those aren't live; they're live to tape, so we tape them live just because of logistics. Chris, I think you've sit and watched some of the stuff that we've done in Buffalo. So we do that. It's a pre-tape. We tape that way. If there's any sort of delays where the game has to be pushed back due to programming that's going on or whatever it may be, if a presentation going on in the building, we can have that overlay of the pre-record, and once that rolls through, it's game time and you're ready to go. We'll have our halftime segments, but when it comes to the game, it's see what's going on the floor. As my job as an analyst, my play-by-play partner, he tells the folks at home what's happening. My job is to tell folks why it happened. Why did that goal happen? What was the reason behind that penalty? Why wasn't that a goal? So that's my job, and it's been a lot of fun working with Matt Cullen this year, a former. We went to school together at the College of Sports Media. So we went to school together, called some games with him in Oakville in Major Series Lacrosse before. So cool to work with him again. Been working with Ashley Docking for many years and Mackie Jenner, and working with Teddy Jenner this year a lot more, which is great. A good buddy of mine, a mentor of mine. So for me to be able to get back in the booth with him a little more often than I have in the past has been a lot of fun this year, Chris.
I'm really looking forward to the game Friday night between Georgia and Ottawa. And the other game I'm really interested in this week is the Saturday night game between Saskatchewan and Buffalo. Not that the other games don't matter, but those are the two games I'm keeping an eye on this weekend.
Oh, buddy, you read my mind. I would be lying if I hadn't been texting with some folks at TSN or at the league saying, hey, maybe we could think about flexing this game to Saturday. But of course, obviously, a lot of scheduling goes into this. It's difficult. I know, you and I think you've even had conversations about this with the NFL when it comes to flexing, these primetime games. Near the end of the year, it's easier because the leagues will leave it open for here's what the game is, but potential flex here. That's what the NLL will do. And I think, this isn't breaking news. I'm not breaking any news. I think this is known. But I think our last 2 or 3 broadcasts to end the year are in Mississauga, because Toronto is now having a wholesale and it looks like they're not going to be in the playoffs. Would not shock me if some of those games get flexed out, near the end of the year to promote those games that are close. Try to have the teams that are in it. I mean, mind you, it could be an opponent like a Halifax, for example. Maybe they keep that because Halifax, that's still an important game for Halifax to win and get in, or maybe secure home floor, whatever it may be. So I know there is a lot of people that, say, why is this game the primetime game? Or why is this the game of the week? Well, a lot of scheduling goes into it. And it's usually not until the end of the year that they have the flexibility, hence the term flex, to flex those games out and choose a different game, a game that has more importance. Because I'll be honest, I think TSN, I think the NLL, if they absolutely could, they would much rather be able to flex that game from the Friday night game to the Saturday night game. Obviously, just too much of a logistical nightmare to do that with a week's notice.
I don't know if you can answer this question, Pat, but I wanted to ask you this anyways. Overall, how are the ratings doing for the National Lacrosse League Game of the Week on TSN? Because I think it's great to get this sport more exposure on a big network.
So full transparency, I haven't seen a lot of the numbers. I've just kind of heard through the grapevine that the numbers are up from where they were last year. And a big reason for that is the Friday night game, not having to go up against Hockey Night in Canada or some of the other events that happen on Saturdays has been a huge bonus for TSN and the NLL. I wish I had the numbers, but the ratings for the Toronto Buffalo game, the last one in Mississauga, but also the one in Buffalo as well. 2 highest rating games this year, no doubt. So you see the trends, Chris. The Buffaloes, the Torontos, those iconic franchises get a little more viewership. But anytime you put Buffalo and Toronto together, as you know, seeing them whether it's live or seeing it on TSN or YouTube or whatever, people who aren't even really, very familiar with the game, they can watch a Buffalo Toronto game and they'll be like, oh my goodness, I'm hooked to this thing. You can feel the hatred coming through your TV screen.
Since we're on, Pat, can you plug the NLL Plus for those people who, like myself recently, you can watch the games live stream as well through NLL Plus, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go to plus.nll.com, there isn't an app just yet. And I'm not too sure if that's in the works or not, but you can use it on your mobile device, your laptop, or if you have a Fire Stick or one of those devices as well, just use your browser, plus.nll.com. And every single National Lacrosse League game, with the exception of the linear TSN, so the Friday night TSN Friday nights, those games aren't available. You can get those on obviously TSN or TSN Plus, but every other game you can get full access to every single game for the NLL. You also can watch games back. So if you miss a game, you can watch back that game. There's highlights, which I love as well. If you're not able to watch a full game, usually I will try to watch every single game back that I can. But obviously that's pretty difficult to do. So if I can't, there's the highlights, which are shorter highlights, like 250 minutes or 250 or 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Sorry. And then there's also an extended highlight pack, which is about 10 minutes long. So it shows even more. So a lot of great content there, and it's free. The best part about it is free. All you got to do, sign up your email, create a password, and every single game for the NLL, as long as you're located in Canada. If you're located in the US, they still do have an exclusive deal with ESPN Plus, but you can go back, watch replay games there. And I wish I had it, Chris, because I do know you do have viewers and listeners from all across the world, but there are a bunch of other countries that you can watch NLL Plus for free as well. Scotland, England, all over Europe, I believe, even in parts of some parts of South America also can get it as well, in Africa and all over the place. Australia, you name it. Lacrosse is trying to not just grow North America, but trying to grow the game worldwide. As you know, Chris, the Olympics, lacrosse sixes will be featured in the LA games. So they really want to, spread this game worldwide.
One thing I would like to see the NLL do in the future is have their post-game media conferences broadcast live stream as well.
Yeah, that would be great. It's some teams do a much better job than others when it comes to having those availability. I know Buffalo does a phenomenal job, like they do with most things. With their press conferences. I do know in the finals they live stream them for sure. That I do know for a fact. So they do that for the finals, but yeah, maybe for these games of the weeks or the ESPN game or whatever it may be, or maybe just all playoff games, they make it available. I know it's a little easier said than done, but I totally agree with you, because when I'm doing my prep for games, that's one of the, besides having conversations with those coaches, but before, to kind of get what the coaches were thinking, or the players, what they're thinking before I have those conversations. I like to go back and listen. And you're kind of spot on with one thing here, is that instant analysis is something that's missing from the NLL. We don't have many teams that have a post game. I think Buffalo does. Saskatchewan certainly does. I'd love to see more post game content for people to be able to hear what the players are saying, hear what the coaches are saying, hear what some of the analysts are saying. I think that's something that's missing in the game of lacrosse, and it would be very cool to see.
And also, too, before we wrap this up, I want to say thanks to John Gerkler and Steve Bermel. They've been really great with coming on my show or doing live in-person interviews. And I'd like to see more of these broadcasters showcased through the National Lacrosse League, because to me, John is as good a broadcaster as anybody in the National Hockey League. And the Sabres' loss was the Buffalo Bandits' gain 20-plus years ago.
You know what, John, well, both John, Steve, and my guy, Dave Buchanan as well. Those three guys do such a phenomenal job when it comes to their broadcast, whether it's on TV or radio. Like, I don't know if everyone knows that, but they're also doing the radio broadcast when we're in town, or when ESPN's in town, they're doing that. And then John's on the road. I think it was Jake Elliott. Yeah, it was Jake Elliott. He tweeted out the other day that John Gertler should be up for the Tom Borelli Media Person of the Year award. It's crazy that he has not won it yet. For all the hard work that he does, he's at every single game for the Bandits, on the road, at home, doing radio, doing TV, writing. Like, he also has a weekly blog as well. He does so much for the game. He is an iconic voice. When you think of the Buffalo Bandits, you think of his goal calls. He's synonymous, him and Chris Swenson as well. Like, when you think of the voices of the Bandits, it's those two guys. In-house, it's Swenny. And then if you're watching on TV or the radio, it is John Gertler. And I think it's a disservice that he hasn't won. And I know he's going to get my vote when the end of the year comes, because it's long, long overdue.
And for someone like me, he's taken me in and treated like I've been part of the team for many years, and I can ask him questions, and Steve's been really approachable, and everybody with that organization, including Scott, who was on my show a couple months ago. The NLL reminds me a lot of the Canadian Football League. It's a professional sports league, but it's a family friendly league, and they're great with their fans, and they're great with their media, and I just really enjoy it.
Yeah, the entire league, I totally agree, is so accessible, and that's what makes this so special. But you mentioned the guys in Buffalo, Scott Loeffler, again, another guy that hasn't won, NLL Executive of the Year. I think he could be up for it and win it almost every single year. I think he does such a phenomenal job and is such a big reason why that is such a success, and why the Bandits are one of the banner franchises of the NLL. But when it's not just the Bandits when it comes to being so approachable. Sure, they do a lot of great things as well, but a lot of the other teams, a lot of the other players and coaches, they realize, Chris, that, they have a service not just to, entertain, but they also have to grow the game as well. So, they're ambassadors to this sport, they're ambassadors to this game, and I think they do a really good job of it.
I just wish I'd started following this years ago, and I've only been following it for maybe 3 years now, and I love the sport, and I just really enjoy it too, Pat. I want to say thank you again for your friendship and support, and giving us over an hour today. I apologize for keeping you over 45 minutes, but
no, it's good.
One last question I wanted to ask you this. I know we've kind of bantered on this, but thoughts on Super Bowl 59 and the performance of Jalen Hurts, the MVP, and the 2024 Eagles team, which I think is the greatest Eagles team in their history and one of the best Super Bowl champions in a long time.
It was a masterclass what the Eagles were able to do. Don't get me wrong, Jalen Hurts, well-deserved MVP. He made all the big throws that he needed to. Made some great runs. Just showed the guy is a true winner, a true competitor. When the lights are shining brightest, it seems like this guy comes out to play. And, as a quarterback, that's what you want. You want the guy not to be afraid of the big moments. And, I think when you look at the overall as a team, you're totally right. Like, it wasn't just the offense that went out there and lit the world on fire. Well, we saw that defense able to do and have Patrick Mahomes running for his life and not able to even, get throws off and panicking in the pocket. We hadn't seen that since what the Buccaneers did to him in the Super Bowl. They completely exposed what the Chiefs kind of were all year long. And not knocking the Eagles, because they were the best team from start, maybe not start to finish, but they were the best team. But the Chiefs kind of felt like they got lucky to get to that point, and no team was able to expose them. The Eagles did it. The Eagles exposed them, and every weakness that the Chiefs had, the Eagles exposed it. And it was I've given Nick Sirianni a ton of flack before, but
same here.
You've got to also give his coordinators a ton of credit as well, because it was a coaching, like, there's not many times where you can say Andy Reid got out coached, but plain and simple, he got out coached. The entire team looked like they were dumbfounded for words. And that was one of the most impressive Eagles performances, one of the most impressive Super Bowl performances I've ever seen. And man, oh man, yeah, as an Eagles fan, you got to hang your head proud, because from top to bottom, man, the Eagles showed up. And it was it was a really, really impressive performance.
As a sports fan, I'm having a great time right now. Obviously, the Eagles, the Argos, the Michigan Wolverines won a national championship. Then the Red Wings have kind of reborn themselves with Todd McClellan. The Pistons are doing well. The Tigers had a good run. So right now, as a sports fan, I've had some teams have I've had some teams suffer for many years, and now it's nice to see your team finally win. And that's why I tell people, win or lose, you got to stay behind your team. And when your team does win, enjoy it, because it's hard to maintain it at a long distance. And I hate the word dynasty and GOAT being used. I think it gets brought up a little too much in our society today. And I really think it's a championship organization starts with its ownership, their general manager, and then the coaching staff and the players. And to me, the Eagles are under Jeffrey Lurie has done a great job. Howie Roseman has done a great job. And Nick Sirianni, who I wanted fired earlier this year, I was wrong about. It all starts with that. And then look at the Buffalo Bandits, look at the Kansas City Chiefs. It all starts with the ownership and management and the roster.
Yeah, it starts from the top, right? Yeah, and that's certainly the case with the Eagles. Like, you just look what they were able to accomplish in the offseason. I mean, they had a great team the year before, but what they were able to do with two brand new
rookies,
offense, two rookies, but also like you bring. Yeah. Oh, I mean, what a great player he has been for them. But like, what you look at, like, they come into this season with new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator, and again, that just I've been very, very hard on Nick Sirianni, and I think he has completely changed my outlook on him for the coaching job that he was able to do. Keep this team together after a bit of a shaky start, some turmoil that I think it was more blown out by the media, but able to keep that trust in that locker room, believe in this team, have that culture. It's so important in all sports, but in football, it's so important. And yeah, gotta give you another congratulations, because it was a very well earned Super Bowl victory.
Well, thank you so much. And I never thought in my lifetime I'd see them win one, but two. And I'm just really appreciating it. And I'm not even worried about next year. I just want to enjoy it. And right now, focus on the National Lacrosse League. Hey, Pat, we're going to wrap this up, but where can my audience follow you on social media and Coolbet Canada? And do you have a question for the host before we let you go?
Sure. Let's start with where you can find me. You can find me at P Greggy on Twitter or X. You can follow me on Instagram at pgreggy22. You can find everything that's going on with Coolbet at Coolbet Canada. And of course, if you are north of the border or even south of the border, most of my work, you can find me on TSN for most of the games of the week. Just follow me on social. I'll usually tweet out when my games are, and you can watch that on TSN or on ESPN Plus south of the border, as well as some of these Halifax TSN.ca and TSN or ESPN Plus games as well. Now for question for the host. If you could, because you've already had 500 and your list of guests is pretty impressive. But let's just say your dream guest, who would be, if you could choose one person, and money doesn't matter, like, just if you could choose to interview one person, who would be your dream guest for Live with CDP?
Steve Yzerman.
Okay, I like it. I love it. I love that. You had, it seemed like you had that ready to go. So that's a good one. I like that. I think that would be a pretty awesome episode that you could ask him a lot about his playing career, and of course now his management career as well.
And Pat, too, I want to say thank you for being a friend, but your support. And it hasn't been an easy road. It's been a long road, 5 years, and doing this self-taught and the old conventional way. I just love doing this. And what I'm most proud about my show is I have a diverse lineup of guests and diverse lineup of topics and subjects. It's not just a sports show where I'm a one-trick pony. I wear many hats, and I've had to learn a lot of things that I never learned before. And your advice has been helping as well. And I want to give a special thanks to especially to Eric Smith and Chuck Swirsky, who came on my show 4 years ago when I first started out, and they gave me some great advice, and I really appreciate. And I wish I could thank all my guests, but it's just I've been really lucky. And the Philly Fanatic, having him on, the guy who plays him, it's just been amazing. And I love doing this, and I just want to keep getting better at it. And it's like whatever you do in life as an athlete or in a career, the more you do something, the more comfortable you get at it. And I feel like I'm very comfortable coming here and talking to my guests and learning to ad-lib too, think on my feet too.
It's all very important, Chris. If you're not getting better, something is wrong. You talk to the best of the biz, whether it's in broadcasting or if you talk to the elite athletes, whatever it may be, they're always looking to evolve. They're always looking, what can they get better at? So, you not being complacent, be proud of what you're doing, because what you've been able to do over the past 5 years, 500 episodes, is remarkable. Just to have the commitment, to have that consistency, that in itself is very impressive. But the growth that you've had is mightily impressive. And just don't lose the hunger, because the hunger is what's always going to drive you to not just get to where you want to be, to stay where you want to be. That's also very important as well.
And I want to say thanks to the Buffalo Bandits, the Buffalo Bisons, the Toronto Argonauts, the Canadian Football League, the NFL, and the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame for these opportunities. And Pat, I want to say thank you so much for coming on here today. And you have an open invite to come back on again, maybe before the start of the National Lacrosse League playoffs, which I believe start in May?
Yes, the March to May, they're coining it. So that starts actually next week. So March and April leads up to the playoffs in May.
All right. Well, Pat, continued success with Coolbet Canada. And we'll be watching your broadcast Friday night at 7 o'clock from Ottawa. And hopefully we'll run into you. I have some beer from Wellington Brewery for you as well. I've saved. They're one awesome. They're official. Great product, Wellington Brewery. I don't know if you've ever had it, but they're really a good product. They're proudly Canadian, and we'll definitely get you some Wellington beer when I see you next.
I've got family that lives out in Guelph and Elora, so I'm very, very familiar with their product. It's a great beer. So I'm happy to have that. And Chris, again, congratulations on episode 500. It's an honor that I get to be the guest of this episode.
Thank you so much, Pat, and we'll talk to you soon on social media. Have a great afternoon, and we'll get you a new shirt because I've got my new logo ready to go.
Sounds great, Chris.
Thanks, Pat. All right, guys, that wraps up episode number 500 today with my special guest, Pat Gregoire from Coolbet Canada and the analyst with the National Lacrosse League's Halifax Thunderbird and the TSN Game of the Week as well. And the TSN Game of the Week this Friday at 7 p.m. with the Georgia Swarm taking on the Ottawa Black Bears at 7 o'clock from the Canadian Tire Center in Ottawa with Pat Gregoire, Matt Cullen, and Ashley Docking, who all do a great job as well. And before we wrap up this show, guys, I'm going to show you highlights of the Buffalo Bandits 13-12 win over San Diego this past Saturday night in San Diego. And this is courtesy of the National Lacrosse League YouTube channel.
Well, there is it for San Diego. We welcome you in if you were watching Tarleton State and UC Arlington on ESPNU. The San Diego Seals. And Geller comes over the top with it. Finds a little room low on Vince on the bouncer, and the Seals are on the board first. It's only going to get better for Robbie Hellier. Smith circling with space, buries it for Buffalo. Dane Smith had a couple last week and has the first for the Bandits, and a much better start offensively. And his family legacy, all of it really brought some emotion out from Patrick Merrill, and brought some out for me as well. And just so happens celebrating his birthday here tonight as well, Cooper, and he can celebrate. Chase Frazier, and he burns top shelf cheese on O'Riglieri. That'll tie it up. Wow, from Fraser. Defended by the young Zach Belzer. Leclerc gets underneath it and backhands it past Vince. And then throws it in with one hand. That is lacrosse at its finest right there. Trey Leclerc. And out front, Buchanan against his old team in his return to Pechanga. Well, Seems like a lifetime ago that Bucky was a member of the San Diego Seals. 4 transition opportunity. I would still classify that as a transition opportunity. Bird coming off the bench with speed and got a pretty good look there.
Priolo turns around and stings it off the goaltender and in.
And he was looking for his shot early and often in this game. And after reset there, I'm not sure they should have, but they did.
Govett with 1, Leclerc with 2 for San Diego. Bird adds 1 more.
The heat on the sidearm. We'll skip off the turf past Vince.
Joins Watson, Jackson, Hellier, Bird, and McIntosh. McIntosh on the crease. Bird to Watson. Scores! Watson now with 5 goals in his last 2.5 games for the Seals as he's starting to find his role in the offense. Byrne trying to sell a penalty, and he doesn't need it. A rocket off the stick of Josh Byrne. Played 4 years of football at LIU Post. And Fraser ties it up, back-to-back Buffalo goals on the feed from Clay Scanlon, I should say, and the Bandits lock in, they'll trade places to Watson.
But it's deadly accurate, and another power play goal for 45 in goal.
Free agency, Chris O'Riglieri, Danny Logan, Eli Goldbrecht. And how about that one? Second for Buchanan.
And this certainly the prettiest of the two. Just watch this from
Smith. Shopping in the Clouche. Glue on his stick, and it goes! I don't know how he caught it, hung onto it, and got a shot away, but it counts. 8-7 Bandits.
Oh, trickler.
Danimal the Manimal. Danny Logan. Gibson dunks it past Vince.
First glance there. He stayed up, let the shot go. Let's watch the ball.
That's it.
That's a goal. That's a goal.
That's a logo. We're running out of time here. 5 seconds. Watson uncorks it. Watson with a hat trick goal. Hellier to his left. McIntosh on the doorstep. Bird circling through. Bird buries it far side. Goldbrecht had enough possession to reset the shot clock.
Again, I'm not sure he did, and the official doesn't either. He was actually counting that down.
Well,
Right now they're going to count a goal.
Got a piece, but has to pick it out of the net now. Dane Smith. At the Chico out and run, and San Diego has an opportunity to push if they want to take it. McIntosh gets it on. Vince the save. Buffalo avoids conceding a shorty. And McKay rolls his way to space, twists it past O'Riglieri, and a one-man effort by Ian McKay at the end of the shot clock.
Wow, just an unfortunate slip on the turf provides the opportunity here. I think you got to give San Diego some credit that they've got to put Buffalo in a couple of spots where they've done that.
McKay in a foot race with Leclerc. McKay save, O'Riglieri. Shot clock under 10. Byrne whistles it behind the net. Diving dunk attempt by Nanticoke. Count it for the Bandit lead.
They have this one set up from the get-go here. And way to watch.
It's not the numbers, it's not the save totals. Leclerc stings it top corner.
Does his work right there. But back to the goaltenders here for a second, Cooper.
Byrne wheeling underneath, kicked away. Scanlon throws it right past O'Riglieri, but Byrne was in the crease, says the official.
To make that decision within that 25-second window. Watch 22. This is the guy that is in question here. Does he reestablish, but kept the stick where he should have and made the save, keeps it a one-goal game?
Jackson pops free. Good recovery from Priolo. Kicked away by Vince on the shot attempt by Thompson. A lot of offensive rebounds and loose balls, but nothing to show for them. Leclerc on course and scores!
On a heater here tonight. And he's going to want a margarita after this game, I'm sure, as he picks up.
We've had 9 lead changes. Smith bounces off of a defender, and Buffalo takes the lead right back from Buchanan, his third of the night, 250th of his career. And play trying to find Jackson, and Buffalo is going to escape Pechanga Arena with a win. The Bandits get their revenge and right the wrongs of a week ago. The same situation, the same score down the street.
That clip was courtesy, the video was courtesy of the National Lacrosse League's YouTube channel, and the Buffalo Bandits came back with a 13-12 win over a very tough and talented San Diego Seals team. 13-12 Bandits. The Bandits are now 8-1. San Diego's 5-6, but San Diego is better than a 5-6 team. I'll tell you this. I mentioned it to Pat Gregoire. San Diego gets some of their injured players back. They're going to be a tough out in the playoffs. I do feel San Diego will make the NLL playoffs, but they made the Bandits work for that win. So the Bandits are now 8-1, and they're off to Saskatchewan Saturday night. I believe it's 9:00 Eastern and 7:00 Mountain Standard Time in Saskatchewan. It's going to be the Rush 9-2 and the Bandits 8-1, and that's for first in the NLL unified standings as well. Also, check out the website, the National Lacrosse League website at nll.com, or you can watch the games live stream through NLL Plus, like I am. And also, if you've never been to a Buffalo Bandits game in Banditland, you can get tickets or check out the website at bandits.com. If you've never been to a National Lacrosse League game, as they call it, box lacrosse, you'll be hooked. It's a little bit of hockey, basketball, and football, and it's a great sport. So check out the NLL or the Buffalo Bandits this weekend. And again, the Friday night TSN game of the week is the Georgia Swarm taking on the Ottawa Black Bears at the Canadian Tire Center in Ottawa with Matt Cullen, Pat Gregoire, and Ashley Dawkin, 7:00 on TSN, and they all do a great job there as well. Also, before we wrap up this show, guys, Small Talk Podcast Season 3, Episode 2 returns on Wednesday, February 26th at 8 p.m. Eastern. That's tomorrow night, Wednesday, February 26th, 8 p.m. with our special guest, Matthew Bernard. He is the host of his own podcast show called Men with a Mentor podcast. And Matthew has over 25 years of experience in the entertainment industry out in Los Angeles as well. So I'm excited to have Matthew Bernard on, along with my co-host Marlene Sharp and myself. So check out the Small Talk Podcast Season 3, Episode 2, tomorrow night, Wednesday, February 26th, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 on the West Coast as well. And I have another announcement to make today, and it's a Detroit type an announcement as well. For the second time on my show coming up on Thursday, February 27th at 8 p.m. Eastern, my special guest is going to be the voice of the Detroit Lions of the National Football League on 97.1 The Ticket in Detroit. And he's also the Fox 2 Detroit sports anchor. And I consider him a friend as well. One of the best broadcasters in the National Football League. Dan Miller will come on, and we're going to talk 2024 Detroit Lions and what this team needs to do in the offseason with the draft and free agency to get over that hump and maybe take on the Eagles in next year's NFC Championship game. So Dan Miller from Fox 2 Detroit and 97.1 The Ticket will be on to talk Detroit Lions and National Football League with us as well. And the NFL Combine, I believe, is this weekend in Indianapolis. And then the NFL Draft is this year's NFL Draft will be in Green Bay in April 2025. And I don't think I'll be able to make it to the one this year in Green Bay. But if you've never been to an NFL draft, it is an amazing experience. And it's almost like the Super Bowl with the amount of media coverage for it. And I was at the NFL draft last year in Detroit. So you know what? I've only been doing this media radio talk show career for 5 years. And I want to say thank you to all the sports leagues and all the individuals that have had faith in me and given me opportunities. And I hope to do another 500 episodes of Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show. And again, I want to say thank you to the Buffalo Bisons, the Buffalo Bandits, the Toronto Argonauts, the Canadian Football League, the National Football League, the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame in St. Mary's for giving me media opportunities and learn how to do this through on skill, what do you call it? On hands training. I'm getting hands-on training. So I want to say thank you to everyone watching the show live streamed and on my audio platforms as well. And I got a couple of quick shout outs here today too, guys. I'm in Guelph. If you're looking for an electrician, if you're looking for a master electrician and he does a really good job and he's certified, his name is Sean Gamby. He is a master electrician, owner of his own company called Conductive Electrical Solutions Incorporated. He's located at 65 McNabb Street East in Aurora, Ontario. Phone number 519-820-5442. That's 519-820-5442. You can email him at Sean at conductiveelectricalsolutions.ca or check out his website www.conductiveelectricalsolutions.ca. So if you're in the Guelph area and you're looking for a master electrician and reasonable prices, check out Sean Gamby. That's Gammie. That's Sean Gamby, master electrician, owner of Conductive Electrical Solutions out of Aurora, Ontario. And also, guys, if you are looking for a good family dentist, check out Dr. Victoria Chan with Stone Road Family Dental at 435 Stone Road West in Guelph, Ontario. Telephone number 519-836-9330. That's 519-836-9330. Dr. Victoria Chan, who's been my dentist for the last 9 years. And if you're looking for a really good dentist that you trust, I highly recommend Dr. Victoria Chan with Stone Road Family Dental at 435 Stone Road West in Guelph at Stone Road Mall. Telephone number again, 519-836-9330 as well. Speaking of sponsors, Wellington Brewery is a sponsor of Chris Pame's Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show. Check out Wellington Brewery on March 12th at 7 p.m. They have Massasauga Imports will join Wellington Brewery again on March 12th at 7 p.m. for Lizards and Loggers Interactive Reptile Show. This all ages event brings some of the world's coolest reptiles right here to your local tap room located at 950 Woodlawn Road West here in Guelph, Ontario, where you can enjoy some brews while getting to hold, pet, and learn about different reptiles as well. And it's a family event, and tickets are available at the link in their bio on Instagram or wellingtonbrewery.ca, and you can follow them on Eventbrite. And P.S. adult tickets do include a pint of beer, just for your information, or a non-alcoholic beverage. So check out the Lizards and Loggers Interactive Reptile Show on March 12th, 7 p.m. at Wellington Brewery, located at 950 Woodlawn Road West in Guelph, Ontario. Check out their website, wellingtonbrewery.ca. Try a Welly on, and please remember to drink responsibly. And Wellington Brewery is proudly Canadian, and they're celebrating their 40th year as one of Canada's oldest local craft breweries as well. And they have been a part of Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show since November 2024. And a special shout out to Jackie Hannah as well for coming aboard Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show. As we wrap up this show, guys, you can follow me on Blue Sky. Yes, I'm on Blue Sky at Live with CDP 19 on Blue Sky Social. If you're looking to adopt a pet, check out the Cambridge and District Humane Society at 1650 Dunbar Road in Cambridge, Ontario. Telephone number 519-623-7722, extension 0, or visit their website, cambridgehumanesociety.org. All the animals and pets up for adoption, their profiles are available on cambridgehumanesociety.org. And if you're looking to volunteer like I do twice a week as a dog walker, you can fill out a volunteer form through their website. And they're doing a quarterly, monthly 50-50 draw, and you can buy tickets through cambridgehumanesociety.org and click on events. And they do a wonderful job with taking care of our homeless furry friends and getting them into proper homes with loving families as well. So Cambridge District Humane Society, and you can pop by again at 1650 Dunbar Road in Cambridge. Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show, again, is live streamed on these platforms: YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, X, Twitch, LinkedIn, and now available on Instagram. And please make sure you subscribe and follow me there. I'm also on a website called beacons.ai/Chris D. Palme. Check me out there at beacons.ai/Chris D. Palme. The 500th episode of Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show, again, is sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership at 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall. Check out barrycullen.com for the newest selection of new and pre-owned GM vehicles, along with their all-electric vehicles and Cadillac vehicles. And you can call the dealership at 519-824-0210 or email them at info@barrycullen.com. And I want to say thank you to Mark Cullen and Barry Cullen Chevrolet for coming aboard my show 2.5 years ago as well. And they have great customer service at Barry Cullen Chevrolet. So please check them out if you're looking for a new or pre-owned vehicle or an all-electric vehicle or a Cadillac. Barry Cullen Chevrolet is your dealership here in Guelph. I am back on TikTok, guys. I lost my TikTok page about 3 weeks ago. Long story there, but I'm back on TikTok. I had to create a new page. So my new handle on TikTok is at Chris Palme on TikTok. So at Chris Palme, and make sure you hit follow and like my content there as well. StreamYard is the official live stream provider of Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show. If you're into webinars or podcasting, check out StreamYard.com. They have business plans, and I've been with StreamYard now for over 4 years, and I highly recommend StreamYard.com for your live servicing needs as well. Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show, the audio versions on these platforms: iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Spotify for podcasters, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Cast, Spotify, Castbox, LinkedIn, Pandora, TuneIn, YouTube Music, and Good Pods. And please remember to subscribe and follow and like on my audio platforms as well. Finally, you can email me at Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show at cpalme19@gmail.com with any comments, questions, suggestions, feedback to this show. And I'm also on PayPal, guys. If you'd like to support my show, my radio media work through PayPal, cpalme19@gmail.com. And also, I am on cameo.com. If you'd like a personalized video from yours truly, check out cameo.com and type in Chris Palme and book your cameo today as well. And you can also follow me on all the major social media platforms: Facebook, Twitter, X, Instagram, Threads, LinkedIn, everywhere. And I'm also on Blue Sky. And I want to say thank you to my 553 subscribers on YouTube. I thank you so much for subscribing. And if you haven't subscribed, check my workout on Live with CDP Talk Show on YouTube, or type in Chris Palme and check out my content, and hopefully subscribe and hit the like notification as well. And that wraps it up again today. I want to say thank you to everyone watching this live streamed or on my audio platforms. And just want to say thank you to all my guests for coming on my show the last 5 years, 500 episodes. Christine Barger, who is an actress and a ventriloquist in Los Angeles, was my first guest on my show 5+ years ago when it was called Chris's Corner on Instagram. So I think I've really enjoyed this show over 5 years, 500 episodes, and a lot of great shows and great guests. And I want to say thank you to my sponsors, Barry Cullen Chevrolet for coming aboard, and Wellington Brewery, which just joined a few months ago, for coming on my show. And if you are a local business that would like to get advertised on my show, which has listeners in 41 countries and over 329,000 views on YouTube, please email me at cpalme19@gmail.com, and looking for more corporate sponsors of this show as well. And I'm hoping to do another 5 years and another 500 another 5 years and another 500 episodes. Again, thank you to Pat Gregoire from Coolbet Canada and from the National Lacrosse League for coming on here today. And I just very thankful and very appreciative of all the media opportunities I've been given to these past 5 years. And I love doing this. And I'm looking forward to the Small Talk Podcast Season 3, Episode 2 tomorrow night with Marlene Sharp and our special guest, Matthew Bernard, as well. And then Thursday night, 8 p.m., Dan Miller from the Detroit Lions, 97.1 The Ticket, and Fox 2 in Detroit will join us, and we'll talk Detroit Lions football as well. And if you're somebody out there that has an interesting story that you'd like to share on live with CDP Sports Entertainment Talk Show, please email me at cpalme19@gmail.com or c.palme19@simpatico.ca. And I'd love to have you on and share your story as well. I hope everybody has a fabulous rest of the Tuesday. And thank you again to everyone for your support of 500 episodes of Live with CDP Sports Entertainment Talk Show. Have a great day, everybody, and we'll see you back tomorrow night at 8 o'clock for the Small Talk podcast with Marlene Sharp and Chris Palme.